doesn't do that. A trained mind observes the storm, understands its patterns, and walks through it with purpose. That's the difference. When you train your mind, you don't react, you respond. And that's where real strength comes from. But how do you do it? How do you build this kind of control? The first step is awareness. You need to catch yourself in the moment, recognize when your emotions are trying to hijack you. Most people don't even notice, they just react. But the moment you become aware, you create space. Space to think, space to choose, space to shift your perspective. The next step is reframing. Instead of seeing challenges as threats, you start seeing them as tests. Instead of viewing stress as something negative, you recognize it as an opportunity to grow stronger. And this isn't just positive thinking, this is rewiring your brain, because the way you interpret a situation determines your emotional response to it. If you see a problem as overwhelming, your body will respond with panic. But if you see it as something you can handle, something you can learn from, your entire physiology shifts. And then there's practice. You have to put yourself in situations that challenge your ability to stay calm. You have to seek discomfort, embrace stress, and train yourself to remain composed. It's no different than going to the gym. If you want to build strength, you have to lift heavier weights. If you want to build mental resilience, you have to expose yourself to difficulty and prove to yourself again and again that you can handle it. Over time, something incredible happens. You start to realize that nothing external has the power to control you unless you give it that power. Someone insults you, you don't have to react. A situation doesn't go your way, you don't have to collapse. Fear creeps in, you don't have to let it take over. You become the kind of person who remains steady no matter what life throws at you. And that is the foundation of true inner strength. So, the question is, who's in control? Is it your emotions, your impulses, your fears? Or is it because the moment you realize that your mind is trainable, that calmness is a skill, and that you have the power to choose how you respond to every situation, that's the moment you step into real mastery. It's the moment you stop being a slave to circumstance and start shaping your reality. There's a moment so brief, so subtle, that most people never even notice. It's the space between what happens to you and how you respond. That fraction of a second, that tiny gap, holds more power than most realize. It's the difference between reacting impulsively and responding with intention. It's the difference between losing control and mastering it. And if you can learn to harness that space, to extend it, to master the pause before reaction, you gain something extraordinary, the ability to dictate your own life rather than be dictated by it. Think about the last time you got angry. Maybe someone said something insulting, maybe something didn't go your way. In an instant, you felt the surge, your heartbeat quickened, your face got hot, your mind flooded with emotion, and before you even realized it, you snapped. You said something you regretted, acted in a way that made things worse, or felt overwhelmed by a reaction that didn't actually serve you. But was it truly beyond your control? Or was it simply a matter of not catching that crucial moment, that brief pause where you could have chosen a different path? Most people live as if they're at the mercy of their emotions. They assume that if something upsets them, they have no choice but to react accordingly. But that's not true. The mind, when trained properly, can insert space between stimulus and response. It can slow things down, almost like stepping outside of yourself and observing the moment objectively. And in that space, you gain clarity, you gain control, you gain the power to decide how you will respond rather than be pulled around by emotions like a puppet on strings. But this isn't just theoretical, it's a skill. And like any skill, it must be trained. It starts with awareness, catching yourself in the moment. The more you practice, the more you recognize when an emotion begins to rise. You start noticing the tension in your body, the racing thoughts, the impulse to react. And instead of immediately giving in to that impulse, you take a breath, just one breath. In that single inhale, in that brief pause, you create room for reason. That pause might be small at first, half a second, maybe less, but with practice, it grows. You begin to extend that space, stretching it longer, giving yourself more time to think, and what happens? Instead of reacting with anger, you respond with composure. Instead of making a rash decision, you choose with wisdom. Instead of being swept away by emotion, you stand firm, grounded in your own discipline. There's a reason why some people seem unfazed by chaos, while others crumble under the slightest pressure. The difference isn't in their circumstances, it's in their ability to pause. The people who navigate difficulty with strength aren't necessarily less emotional, they've simply trained themselves to step back, to observe, to give themselves the time to respond instead of react. And it's not about suppressing emotion. That's a mistake many people make. They think staying calm means bottling everything up, pretending they don't feel anything. But that's not mastery. That's avoidance. True mastery is acknowledging the emotion, feeling it fully without letting it dictate your actions. It's looking at your anger, your frustration, your fear, and saying, I see you, but you don't control me. You've probably experienced moments like this without even realizing it. A time when you were about to say something in anger but stopped yourself. A time when you wanted to lash out but instead took a deep breath and walked away. Those were glimpses of control, of mastery over your own impulses. Now imagine expanding that ability, strengthening it until it becomes second nature. Imagine moving through life with the unwavering ability to remain calm, composed, and deliberate, no matter what happens. But here's the key. This isn't something you learn overnight. You can't just decide to be calm and expect it to happen instantly. It's a practice, a discipline. It's catching yourself again and again until that pause becomes ingrained in your mind, until it's no longer an effort but a habit. And once it becomes a habit, everything changes. You stop making decisions you regret. You stop being controlled by fleeting emotions. You start acting with intention, with clarity, with purpose. People notice. And they wonder how you stay so composed, how you remain so steady in the face of adversity. And it's simple. You've trained your mind to pause. Because in the end, control isn't about forcing yourself to stay calm. It's about mastering the moment before reaction, stretching that space, and choosing every single time who you want to be. Stress is inevitable. No matter who you are, no matter how much control you think you have over your life, you will face moments of uncertainty, challenge, and discomfort. That's not a flaw in the system. It's the system itself. Life doesn't hand you a perfectly ordered existence. It throws obstacles in your way, not because it's cruel, but because that's how growth happens. The problem isn't stress itself. The problem is how you interpret it, because stress isn't just something that happens to you, it's something that happens within you. And the way you frame it, the way you choose to see it, determines whether it strengthens you or breaks you. Most people see stress as the enemy. They feel that tightening in their chest, that racing of the mind, and they assume something is wrong. I shouldn't feel this way, they tell themselves. This is bad. And so they resist it. They try to push it away, suppress it, or worse, let it consume them. But what if that interpretation is flawed? What if stress isn't something to run from, but something to lean into? What if instead of seeing it as a threat, you saw it as a signal, an opportunity, a call to action? The difference between someone who thrives under pressure and someone who collapses isn't in the amount of stress they experience, it's in how they frame it. Imagine two people facing the same challenge. One sees it as overwhelming, insurmountable. They panic, freeze, or avoid it altogether. The other sees it as a challenge, something difficult, yes, but also something meaningful, a chance to prove themselves, to grow, to adapt. Same situation, completely different outcome. Why? Because the mind dictates the experience. You've experienced this before, whether you realize it or not. Think back to a time when you were nervous, maybe before a speech, an important conversation, a high-stakes moment. Your heart was pounding, your hands were shaking. The physical symptoms were identical to fear, but then something shifted. You reframed it. You told yourself, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. And just like that, the experience changed. The stress was still there, but it became fuel instead of a burden. And this applies to every form of stress in life. You lose a job, and you can see it as a disaster or as a chance to rebuild something better. A relationship ends, and you can see it as rejection or as a lesson that prepares you for something greater. You face uncertainty, and you can see it as chaos or as the beginning of something new. The situation itself Doesn't change. You do. But this isn't about tricking yourself into positive thinking. It's not about pretending that everything is easy or ignoring real difficulty. It's about shifting your perspective in a way that empowers you. Because the truth is, stress isn't just mental, it's biological. When you interpret a situation as a threat, your body responds with fight or flight mode. Your heart races, your muscles tense, your focus narrows. But when you interpret the same situation as a challenge, your body releases different chemicals, dopamine, adrenaline, endorphins, designed to sharpen your mind and enhance performance. The only difference, your perception. So how do you apply this? How do you train your mind to automatically reframe stress in a way that serves you rather than hinders you? It starts with awareness. The next time you feel overwhelmed, stop and ask yourself, how am I interpreting this? Am I seeing this as something that's happening to me or something that's happening for me? That small shift in language changes everything. Then challenge your assumptions. Just because something feels uncomfortable doesn't mean it's bad. Growth is uncomfortable. Strength is built in discomfort. What if stress isn't a sign that something is wrong, but a sign that you're exactly where you need to be? What if the very thing you're resisting is the thing that will make you stronger? And finally, take control of the narrative. The stories you tell yourself about stress become your reality. If you tell yourself, I can't handle this, you reinforce helplessness. If you tell yourself, this is tough, but I'll figure it out, you reinforce resilience. Your words shape your mind, and your mind shapes your world. This is why some of the most successful, unshakable people in history didn't avoid stress, they embraced it. They didn't crumble under pressure, they thrived in it. Not because they were immune to stress, but because they understood its role. They saw hardship as a training ground. They saw resistance as a teacher. And they didn't ask, why is this happening to me? They asked, what can I learn from this? And that's the shift. That's the power of reframing. Because stress itself isn't what breaks you. It's your perception of it that does. But the moment you stop seeing it as the enemy, the moment you choose to use it rather than fear it, that's the moment stress stops controlling you and you start controlling it. Life will test you. It will push you to your limits, throw you into uncertainty, and force you to confront your fears. And in those moments, the question isn't whether the world is fair, because it isn't. The question isn't whether things should be easier, because they won't be. The real question is, how strong are you? Not just physically, not just intellectually, but emotionally. How much pressure can you take before you break? How much adversity can you endure before you give up? That's what emotional resilience is about. It's the ability to withstand the chaos of life without losing yourself in it. Most people assume that emotional resilience is something you either have or you don't. That some people are just naturally tougher, more capable of handling stress, while others crumble. But that's not true. Emotional resilience isn't a trait, it's a skill. And like any skill, it can be developed. It can be trained, refined, strengthened. The question is whether or not you're willing to do the work. Think about a time when you faced something difficult. Maybe you lost someone you cared about. Maybe you failed at something you worked hard for. Maybe you were thrown into a situation you didn't expect, one that left you feeling lost, uncertain, or even broken. In that moment, you had a choice. You could let the weight of it crush you, or you could adapt. And if you're here right now, if you're listening to this, it means you chose to endure. You may not have realized it, but that was resilience. It wasn't easy, it wasn't comfortable, but you faced it. And that means you have the capacity for it. Now imagine what would happen if you trained that capacity, if you deliberately strengthened your ability to face difficulty rather than just hoping you'll survive it. The first step to developing emotional resilience is understanding that hardship is not an exception in life. It's the rule. If you expect life to be easy, if you expect things to always go your way, you set yourself up for constant disappointment. But if you accept that struggle is part of existence, you remove its power to shock you. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, how am I going to deal with this? That shift alone changes everything because it moves you from a position of helplessness to a position of control. But acceptance isn't enough. You have to train your mind to withstand discomfort, to face stress without immediately seeking escape, Most people avoid discomfort at all costs. The moment they feel anxiety, they distract themselves. The moment they feel frustration, they lash out. The moment they feel uncertainty, they shut down. But what if instead of avoiding these feelings, you leaned into them? What if you saw discomfort not as something to fear, but as something to master? It starts with small things. You practice patience when you feel impatience. You practice gratitude when you feel frustration. You practice composure when everything in you wants to react emotionally. And with each small victory, you prove to yourself that you are not controlled by your emotions. You are in control of them. Then there's perspective. Resilient people don't see challenges as permanent. They don't believe that just because something is difficult now, it will always be difficult. They recognize that hardship is temporary, that even the worst storms eventually pass. This perspective is what keeps them moving forward, even when everything inside them wants to give up. And finally, there's action, because resilience isn't just about enduring, it's about adapting. It's about looking at a situation and asking, what can I do even when things feel impossible? It's about taking responsibility even when you don't feel like you have control. It's about understanding that no matter how hard life gets, you always have a choice in how you respond. That's what separates those who thrive from those who merely survive. It's not that they don't struggle, it's that they refuse to be defeated by their struggle. They face what others run from. They endure what others break under. They adapt when others collapse. And that ability, that strength, is something you can build, something you can train. Chaos is everywhere. It's in the noise of the world, in the unpredictability of life, in the endless stream of distractions pulling at your mind. And if you're not careful, that chaos seeps into you. It becomes the way you think, the way you feel, the way you move through the world, scattered, anxious, restless. But there's a way to counteract that. There's a way to create a foundation of stability, a way to cultivate a sense of calm that isn't dependent on circumstances, but built from within. And that way is through ritual. Most people don't realize how much their daily habits shape their state of mind. They wake up and immediately grab their phone, flooding their brain with notifications and news before they've even taken a breath. They rush through their morning, already stressed before the day has even begun. They consume whatever the world throws at them, never stopping to consider whether it's serving them or harming them. And then they wonder why they feel overwhelmed, why they feel scattered, why they can't seem to find peace. But peace isn't something you stumble upon, it's something you create. If you want to train your mind to stay calm in any situation, you need to practice calmness every single day. You need to build it into your routine, make it a priority, structure your life in a way that reinforces it. Because if you don't, the world will dictate your state of mind for you. It starts with something simple, how you begin your day. The first few moments after you wake up set the tone for everything that follows. If the first thing you do is expose yourself to stress, then stress becomes the foundation of your day. But if the first thing you do is establish control, through breath, through movement, through silence, then you start from a place of strength. Maybe it's a few minutes of deep breathing before you even get out of bed. Maybe it's stretching, feeling your body wake up before your mind gets lost in thought. Maybe it's journaling, organizing the chaos in your mind before the world has a chance to intrude. The ritual itself isn't the point. It's what it represents. It's a signal to yourself that you are in control, that you are grounded, that no matter what happens today, you begin from a place of clarity. But it's not just about mornings. Throughout the day, the world will try to pull you out of that state. You'll get frustrated, you'll feel pressure, you'll be tempted to react impulsively. And this is where a second layer of ritual becomes necessary. Small resets throughout the day. These don't need to be elaborate. A deep breath before responding to an email. A moment of stillness before stepping into a difficult conversation. A short walk to clear your mind when stress starts to build. These tiny pauses create space between you and the chaos. They remind you that you are not at the mercy of external circumstances. You always have a choice in how you engage with the world. Then there's the evening, the way you close your day. Most people treat sleep as an afterthought. They consume noise until the very last moment, scrolling through their phones, watching endless stimulation, then expect their minds to simply shut off. But your mind doesn't work that way. It needs time to wind down, time to process, time to shift from the external world to the internal one. A strong evening ritual isn't about restriction, it's about creating a sense of finality. Maybe it's reading instead of screens. Maybe it's writing down what went well that day, focusing your mind on progress rather than problems. Maybe it's simply sitting in silence, letting your thoughts settle instead of constantly stirring them up. The goal is the same, to end the day with intention rather than chaos. And over time, these rituals add up. They become the structure that holds you together when everything else feels uncertain. They train your mind to seek calm rather than chase distraction. They create a sense of inner stability that isn't dependent on things going right, but on your ability to handle things when they go wrong. This isn't about perfection. You will have days where you slip, where you fall back into old habits, where you let the chaos in. That's part of the process. The point isn't to be flawless. The point is to keep coming back, to rebuild the structure when it cracks, to return to the rituals that bring you back to yourself. Because in a world full of noise, the ability to create your own calm is one of the most powerful things you can do. And once you learn to master it, you realize that no matter what happens, you will always have a place of stillness to return to. Life is suffering. That's not a pessimistic view, it's a fundamental truth. You will face hardship, you will encounter obstacles, and at some point you will be brought to your knees. No one escapes this. The question isn't whether or not adversity will come, it's whether or not you will let it destroy you or use it to build something greater. Because suffering contains potential. It holds within it the seeds of transformation. And those who understand this, who learn to use adversity rather than run from it, become something formidable. Most people spend their lives avoiding difficulty. They resist pain. They complain about setbacks. They see struggle as an injustice. But avoidance doesn't make life easier. It makes you weaker. If you refuse to face challenges, you remain fragile, incapable of handling pressure when it inevitably arises. But if you voluntarily confront hardship, if you lean into the discomfort rather than retreat from it, you cultivate resilience. You develop the ability to endure, to adapt, to grow. And that ability is what separates those who crumble under adversity from those who emerge from it stronger than before. Look at anyone who has achieved something meaningful. Their success is not despite their struggles, but because of them. The person who builds a thriving business didn't have an easy path. They failed. They faced rejection. They lost before they won. The individual who develops deep wisdom didn't live a life free of pain. They suffered. They questioned. They rebuilt themselves from the ground up. Growth is not born from comfort. It is forged in difficulty, in the moments when everything feels like it's falling apart, and you are forced to decide whether to give up or push forward. This doesn't mean you seek out suffering for suffering's sake. It means that when adversity arrives, and it will, you refuse to let it break you. You analyze it. You ask, what can I learn from this? How can this refine me? Instead of seeing hardship as an attack, you see it as a test, an opportunity to strengthen the parts of yourself that remain weak. Because every challenge contains within it a lesson. And if you are willing to look for that lesson, if you are willing to endure the discomfort that comes with learning it, you will emerge from adversity as someone transformed. And that is the ultimate goal, not to avoid difficulty, but to use it, to take the pain, the setbacks, the failures, and turn them into something meaningful. To ensure that no suffering is wasted, that every struggle refines you rather than diminishes you, because the world will test you, whether you are ready or not. The only real choice you have is whether you let that test destroy you or make you unstoppable. Life is unpredictable. It will challenge you, disrupt your plans, and